Admiral Zexthara stared at the holographic display floating above her command table. The blue light cast strange shadows across her face as she studied the reports that had been coming in for weeks. Each report was the same. Pirate ships gone. Slaver vessels found empty. Criminal outposts destroyed overnight. All across the outer rim of the galaxy, something was hunting. The Admiral was a tall creature with 4 arms and silver skin that gleamed under the ship's lights. She had served the Galactic Empire for over 200 years. In all that time, she had never seen anything like this. Whatever was out there moved like a ghost. It struck without warning and left no trace behind. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Vorn from his station across the bridge. "We have another report from Sector 47. Zexthara turned her large black eyes toward the young officer. "Show me." The holographic display changed to show a star map. Red dots marked the locations where attacks had happened. There were dozens of them now, scattered across hundreds of light years, but they all had something in common. They were all places where the Empire's worst criminals operated. The Bloodfang pirates, Vorn read from his datapad. Entire fleet of 12 ships found drifting near the Shelos asteroid field. No life signs, no damage to the ships. The crews were simply gone. Gone where? Zexthara asked. Unknown, Admiral. But their cargo holds were empty. They had been carrying slaves from the Nexari colonies. 3,000 beings who were supposed to be sold at the Vortex station markets. Zexthara walked closer to the display. She touched one of the red dots. With her finger, "What about the slaves?" "No trace of them either." "But Admiral, there's something else." The ships had a symbol painted on their hulls. Same symbol we've seen at the other sites. The display changed again. Now it showed a simple image. A circle with lines radiating out from it like a sun. Below, it were words written in a language none of them recognized. "Have our linguists made any progress translating this?" The Admiral asked. "No, Admiral. But we did get some information from survivors at the Grendel mining station. The station was attacked last month. Most of the criminal elements there were captured or killed, but some of the workers escaped. They said the attackers called themselves Guardians." Zexthara felt a chill run through her body. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 5,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. They knew every major power, every rebel group, every threat in their territory, but this was something new. "What do we know about their ships?" she asked. Lieutenant Vorn scrolled through his data. "That's the strange part, Admiral. Our sensors can barely detect them. When they do appear, the signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They seem to use some kind of advanced stealth technology. And their weapons ... double quotes." He paused. "What about their weapons?" "They don't seem to use traditional energy weapons at all. No plasma cannons, no particle beams, no nuclear missiles. But somehow, they can disable our ships without destroying them. It's like they just reach out and turn off our technology." Zexthara studied the map again. The attacks had started small, hitting isolated pirate bands and criminal gangs, but they were getting bolder. Last week, they had hit an Imperial supply depot that was known to traffic in illegal goods. The depot's guards had been found unconscious, but unharmed. All the illegal cargo was gone. "Admiral," another voice called from across the bridge. It was Commander Krath, her second in command. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Imperial Command." "Put it through." The holographic display changed to show the face of Grand Admiral Vorhan. His reptilian features were stern as always, but Zexthara could see concern in his yellow eyes. "Admiral Zexthara," he said, "I trust you've been following the situation. In the Outer Rim sectors, yes, Grand Admiral. I've been compiling reports for the High Council. The High Council has reviewed your preliminary findings. They believe we're dealing with a new rebel faction, possibly funded by the Andorian Republic or the Free Worlds Coalition." Zexthara frowned. "With respect, Grand Admiral, I don't think this is a typical rebel group. Their tactics are too sophisticated, and their technology is unlike anything we've seen from known enemies. Nevertheless, Admiral, you are to treat this as a standard insurgency. Deploy your fleet to the affected sectors and crush this threat before it spreads to the core worlds. The transmission ended before Zexthara could respond. She stared at the empty display for a moment, then turned to her officers. Commander Krath, prepare the fleet for departure. We're heading to the Outer Rim. Yes, Admiral, what's our target? Zexthara looked at the map one more time. The red dots seemed to form a pattern, moving slowly inward toward more populated systems. Sector 23. Intelligence report suggests the next attack will likely occur there. We'll set a trap. 3 days later, the Imperial fleet arrived in Sector 23. Zexthara had brought 12 ships, including her flagship, the mighty dreadnought, Domination. They positioned themselves around the system's main shipping lanes, waiting. They didn't have to wait long. The first sign was a distress call from a cargo vessel carrying illegal weapons to separatist groups. The ship's captain reported that unknown vessels had appeared out of nowhere and were demanding his surrender. All ships move to intercept, Zexthara ordered. Finally, we'll get a look at these guardians. The Imperial fleet raced toward the cargo ship's position. But when they arrived, they found only the empty vessel drifting in space. The crew was gone, and so was the illegal cargo. But the ship itself was undamaged. Admiral, Lieutenant Vorn called out. I'm detecting faint energy signatures moving away from our position. Multiple contacts, but they're barely registering on our sensors. Pursuit course. All ships follow. My lead, the Imperial fleet gave chase, but it was like trying to catch smoke. The enemy signatures would appear on their sensors for a few seconds, then vanish completely. Whenever the Imperial ships moved to intercept, they found nothing but empty space. After 6 hours of futile searching, Zexthara called off the pursuit. As they headed back to their patrol positions, she noticed something that made her scales crawl with unease. Throughout the entire chase, she had felt like they were being watched, not hunted but observed, as if something was studying them with the same intensity they were using to hunt it. That night, as the fleet maintained its patrol pattern, the bridge received an encrypted transmission. The signal was weak and used an unknown frequency, but somehow it bypassed all their security systems and appeared directly on the Admiral's personal communication channel. The message was simple. A single line of text in perfect Imperial standard. Your crimes against the innocent have been noted. Change your ways or face the consequences. Zexthara stared at the message for a long time. No one should have been able to penetrate their communications like that. It meant whoever they were dealing with had technology that was far more advanced than anything the Empire possessed. She thought about the pattern of attacks. Pirates, slavers, criminals, corrupt officials. The targets weren't random. Someone was deliberately hunting down the worst elements in Imperial space. Someone with the power to make entire fleets disappear and the restraint to leave witnesses alive. Over the next few weeks, the attacks continued. Each one was more daring than the last. A slaver depot was liberated, its prisoners somehow transported away before Imperial forces could respond. A pirate stronghold was found abandoned, its leaders gone, but its treasure left behind with a note saying it should be returned to the worlds it was stolen from. The most shocking incident happened when Governor Maltex of the Kepler colonies was found unconscious in his office. When he woke up, he discovered that all records of his illegal slave trading operations had been copied and transmitted to every news network in the sector. Within days, revolts had broken out on 3 worlds under his control. Zexthara began to realize that they weren't just dealing with a military threat. This was something that struck at the very heart of how the Empire operated. For thousands of years, the Empire had maintained control through fear and the threat of overwhelming force. But these attackers seemed immune to fear. Worse, they were making the Empire's forces look weak and ineffective. The Admiral requested a meeting with the High Council, but her concerns were dismissed. The Council insisted that no primitive rebel group could pose a serious threat to the Empire's might. They ordered her to increase patrols and crack down harder on dissent, but Zexthara knew better. In her long career, she had learned to read the signs of a changing galaxy. The Empire had faced rebels before, but this was different. These attackers weren't trying to conquer territory or seize power. They were doing something far more dangerous. They were proving that the Empire could be defied. Late one night, alone in her quarters, Admiral Zextara studied the reports one more time. She traced the pattern of attacks with her finger, noting how they had grown bolder and more frequent. Whatever force was out there, it was learning. It was adapting. And it was moving closer to the core worlds with each passing day. She thought about the message she had received. Change your ways or face the consequences. It wasn't a threat of violence or conquest. It was something much more frightening. It was a promise that the old ways of doing things were coming to an end. For the first time in her long career, Admiral Zextara felt truly afraid. Not of death or defeat, but of change. The galaxy was shifting beneath their feet, and she had no idea what was coming next. All she knew was that somewhere out in the darkness something was watching them. Something that had the power to make the mighty Galactic Empire look weak and foolish. And it was getting closer every day. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars slowly shift as her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. After 6 months of covert operations, humanity was finally ready to reveal itself to the Galactic Empire. The time for shadows and secret missions was over. "Ma'am, we're approaching the Imperial border," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the navigation station. "Long-range sensors are picking up patrol ships ahead?" Elena nodded. She was a compact woman with dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen too much war. At 42, she had commanded 3 different ships in humanity's recent conflicts. But this mission was unlike anything she had done before. Today, she would speak for all of humanity to an empire that ruled half the galaxy. Signal all stations. "Prepare for first contact protocols," she ordered. Around her, the bridge crew moved with quiet efficiency. These were not ordinary diplomats or politicians. Every person aboard the Defiant was a veteran of humanity's long struggle for freedom. They knew what was at stake. "Captain," called Chief Science Officer Dr. Sarah Chun from her station. "I'm detecting multiple Imperial vessels moving to intercept us." "Looks like a full battle group," Elena smiled slightly. "They're scared. Good. Fear will make them listen more carefully." The Defiant was not a large ship by Imperial standards. It was sleek and dark, designed for stealth rather than intimidation. But Elena knew that size meant nothing when you had the right technology. Humanity had learned long ago that survival often depended on being underestimated. "Incoming transmission from the Imperial fleet," reported Communications Officer Lieutenant Torres. "They're demanding we identify ourselves and state our business." "Open a channel," Elena said. She smoothed down her blue diplomatic uniform and stepped forward. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Defiant, representing the United Nations of Earth and its colonial territories. We request permission to enter Imperial space for diplomatic purposes." There was a long pause. Elena could imagine the confusion aboard the Imperial ships. For months, they had been hunting ghosts in their outer territories. Now, a ship had appeared out of nowhere, claiming to represent a species they had never heard of. The reply came from a stern voice with a thick accent. "Unknown vessel, you are in violation of Imperial space. Prepare to be boarded for inspection." Elena exchanged glances with her first officer, Commander Marcus Webb. He was a tall black man with graying hair and a calm demeanor that hid a sharp, tactical mind. "Shall we show them what the Defiant can do?" he asked quietly. "Not yet," Elena replied. "Let's see how they handle diplomacy first." She activated the communication channel again. "Imperial Command, we are here under the ancient laws of first contact. We seek an audience with your leadership to discuss matters of mutual importance." Another pause. This time longer. Finally, a different voice came through the speakers. It was female and spoke with more authority. "This is Admiral Zextara of the Imperial Fleet. State the nature of your diplomatic mission." Elena felt a surge of satisfaction. Admiral Zextara was exactly who she had hoped to speak with. Human intelligence had identified her as one of the Empire's most capable commanders and, more importantly, one of the few who might listen to reason. Admiral Zexthara, we represent a species that has recently become aware of the Galactic Empire. We wish to discuss the possibility of peaceful relations and mutual cooperation. We also have information regarding recent incidents in your outer territories that may be of interest to you. This time the pause was very long indeed. Elena knew the Admiral was probably consulting with her superiors and running every scan possible on the Defiant. She would find that the human ship's true capabilities were hidden behind layers of advanced shielding and sensor baffles. Very well, Admiral Zexthara finally replied. You will accompany my fleet to Station Omega-7 for formal diplomatic proceedings. Any attempt to deviate from our course or activate weapon systems will be considered an act of war. Elena smiled. Understood, Admiral. We look forward to the meeting. The journey to Station Omega-7 took 2 days. During that time, Elena could feel the Imperial ships around them, their sensors constantly probing the Defiant's hull. She knew they were finding very little useful information. Human stealth technology was generations ahead of anything the Empire possessed. On the second day, Commander Webb approached her in her ready room. Captain, we're receiving coded transmissions from the Sol system. The other ships are reporting successful completion of their missions. Elena looked up from the diplomatic briefing she was studying. All of them, every single one. The Covenant liberated the mining colonies in Sector 15. The Prometheus evacuated the slave markets on Tortuga Prime, and the Endeavor just finished relocating the survivors from the Nexari homeworld to New Geneva. Elena nodded with satisfaction. While she had been preparing for diplomatic contact, dozens of other human ships had been conducting what the military called liberation operations throughout Imperial space. Thousands of enslaved beings had been freed and relocated to human-protected territories. Any Imperial response? She asked. Some patrols were dispatched to investigate, but our ships were long gone by the time they arrived. The Empire still doesn't know what hit them. Elena stood and walked to the small window in her quarters. Outside, she could see the massive Imperial battle station growing larger as they approached. It was a testament to the Empire's engineering prowess, but also to their need to project power through intimidation. Marcus, do you think they'll figure out that we're the ones who've been hitting their criminal operations? Commander Webb considered this. Eventually. They're not stupid, just arrogant. When we start talking about humanitarian concerns and protection of innocent life, they'll put the pieces together. Good, Elena said. I want them to know. It's time they understood that their actions have consequences. Station Omega-7 was a massive structure that served as both a military base and a diplomatic facility. As the Defiant docked, Elena could see hundreds of Imperial personnel watching from observation decks. She knew that word of humanity's arrival had spread quickly through the station. The docking bay was filled with Imperial soldiers in full armor. They carried energy weapons and wore threatening expressions, clearly meant to intimidate the human delegation. Elena and her team walked through their ranks without showing any fear. Admiral Zexthara was waiting for them in the station's main conference room. She was even more imposing in person than Elena had expected. Her 4 arms and silver skin gave her an alien appearance, but her large black eyes showed an intelligence that Elena respected. Captain Vasquez, the Admiral said in accented but clear English, welcome to Imperial space. I must admit, your arrival has caused quite a stir among our leadership. Elena bowed slightly in the human gesture of respect. Admiral Zexthara, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We hope this will be the beginning of a long and productive relationship between our peoples. They took seats around a large table. Elena had brought only 3 advisors with her, Commander Webb, Dr. Chun, and Ambassador Patricia Williams, a skilled negotiator who had helped establish humanity's alliance with the Centauri Republic. Before we begin formal negotiations, Admiral, Zexthara said, I must ask about your ship's capabilities. Our sensors were unable to get clear readings on your technology. Elena smiled. We understand your curiosity, Admiral. Humans have always believed in being prepared for any situation. Our technology reflects that philosophy. And where exactly do humans come from? Our star charts show no inhabited systems, matching your ship's point of origin. We come from a small system about 200 light-years from here, Elena replied. Until recently, we were focused on developing our own colonies and had little contact with other galactic powers. This was technically true, though it left out the fact that humanity had been secretly observing the Empire for over a year before beginning their liberation operations. Admiral Zexthara leaned forward. Captain, I must be direct with you. For the past several months, we have been dealing with mysterious attacks throughout our territory. Ships and installations belonging to criminal organizations have been targeted by unknown forces. Do you know anything about these incidents? Elena met the Admiral's gaze steadily. Admiral, humans have strong feelings about the treatment of innocent beings. When we learned that certain elements in Imperial space were engaged in slavery, piracy, and other crimes against sentient life, we felt compelled to act. The room fell silent. Elena could see the understanding dawning in Admiral Zexthara's eyes. You're telling me that your people were responsible for those attacks? The Admiral asked quietly. We prefer to call them rescue operations, Elena replied. We have relocated over 50,000 enslaved beings to safe territories where they can live free lives? Admiral Zexthara sat back in her chair. Elena could see her processing this information, realizing that the mysterious force her fleet had been hunting was sitting right across the table from her. How many ships do you have? The Admiral asked. Enough, Elena replied simply. What do you want from the Empire? Elena leaned forward. We want what any civilized species wants, Admiral. We want to trade peacefully, share knowledge, and explore the galaxy together. But we also want assurance that the Empire will take steps to end the criminal activities that we've been forced to address. You speak as if you have some kind of authority over Imperial affairs, Admiral Zexthara said, her voice hardening. Not authority, Admiral. Just the ability to protect innocent life when we encounter threats to it. Elena activated a small device on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing detailed records of the criminal operations that humanity had disrupted. These are the files we recovered from various criminal organizations, Elena explained. Slave trading routes, piracy operations, illegal weapons trafficking, all of it operating with the knowledge, and in some cases the active support of Imperial officials? Admiral Zexthara studied the display with growing alarm. The information was incredibly detailed, showing connections and operations that even Imperial intelligence had not fully mapped. How did you gather all this intelligence? She asked. Humans are very good at gathering information, Admiral. We had to be. On our homeworld, survival often depended on knowing everything about potential threats. Elena paused, then continued. We're sharing this with you as a gesture of good faith. We don't want to be enemies of the Empire. But we also won't stand by while innocent beings suffer. Admiral Zexthara was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see her weighing options, considering the implications of everything she had learned. Captain Vasquez, she finally said, you must understand that what you're proposing would require massive changes to how the Empire operates. There are powerful interests that benefit from the current system. We understand that change is difficult, Admiral, but consider the alternative. Right now, your outer territories are in chaos because criminal organizations are being systematically dismantled. Your military resources are being stretched thin trying to respond to threats you can't even detect. How long before that instability spreads to your core worlds? Elena stood and walked to the large window that showed the docking bay where the Defiant waited. We're offering you a choice, Admiral. Work with us to create a more stable and just galaxy, or continue fighting a war you can't win against an enemy you can't catch. Admiral Zexthara joined her at the window. And if the Empire chooses not to cooperate? Elena turned to face her. Then we'll continue doing what we think is right. But we'd much rather work together than against each other. The Admiral stared at the sleek human ship for a long time. Elena knew she was seeing it with new eyes now, understanding that this small vessel represented a force that had already proven capable of outmaneuvering the entire Imperial fleet. I'll need to consult with my superiors, Admiral Zexthara said finally. Of course, Elena replied. But Admiral, I hope you'll convey to them that this is an opportunity, not just a threat. Humanity has much to offer the galaxy. We've developed technologies that could benefit all species. We've learned ways of governing that ensure both order and freedom. And we've proven that different species can work together for the common good. Admiral Zexthara nodded slowly. I'll relay your message, Captain. But I must warn you, the Empire does not respond well to ultimatums. Elena smiled. Admiral, this isn't an ultimatum. It's an invitation. We're inviting the Empire to join us in building a better galaxy. The choice is yours. As the meeting ended and Elena prepared to return to her ship, she felt cautiously optimistic. Admiral Zexthara was clearly intelligent and pragmatic. If anyone in the Imperial leadership could see reason, it would be her. But Elena also knew that powerful empires rarely changed willingly. Humanity would need to be prepared for whatever came next. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were truly capable of when they fought for something they believed in. Dr. Kellner Voss was the Empire's leading expert on alien biology. In his 300 years of life, he had studied over 200 different species. He had dissected warriors from the fierce Kregan clans and analyzed the complex nervous systems of the peaceful Etherians. But nothing had prepared him for studying humans. He stood in his laboratory aboard the Imperial research station, staring at the genetic data displayed on his screens. 3 weeks had passed since the first diplomatic meeting with Captain Vasquez, and the Empire had been working frantically to understand these newcomers. What Dr. Voss had discovered made him deeply uncomfortable. Computer, display human evolutionary timeline. He commanded. The screen showed a progression of images starting with primitive, ape-like creatures and ending with modern humans, but it was the middle stages that disturbed him most. These early humans had been persistence hunters, chasing their prey across vast distances until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They had evolved not just physical endurance, but mental resilience that bordered on madness. Dr. Voss, called his assistant, a young Zilani named Theta 9, the psychological profiles are complete. Show me. A new display appeared, filled with data about human behavior patterns. Dr. Voss read through it with growing alarm. Humans formed emotional bonds not just with their own species, but with complete strangers from other worlds. They would risk their lives for abstract concepts like justice and freedom. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to have an almost pathological need to help others even when it offered no benefit to themselves. This can't be correct, Dr. Voss muttered. No species evolves this way. Altruism toward other species provides no evolutionary advantage. Theta 9 checked her data again. The readings are accurate, Doctor. We've confirmed them multiple times. Humans really do possess what they call empathy toward beings they've never met. Dr. Voss turned away from the screen and walked to his specimen collection. Jars filled with tissue samples from dozens of species lined the walls. Each one represented a conquest of the Empire, a world brought under Imperial control through force and intimidation. But humans seemed immune to such tactics. Have you seen the reports from Sector 12? He asked his assistant. You mean the incident with Governor Maltex? Yes, a human colony ship was attacked by slavers working for the governor. The humans didn't just defend themselves. They evacuated their entire colony overnight and then systematically destroyed every illegal operation in that sector. In 3 days, they freed over 10,000 slaves and captured enough evidence to bring down the governor's entire criminal network. Dr. Voss pulled up security footage from the attacks. The human ships moved with deadly precision, but what struck him most was their restraint. They could have easily killed everyone involved, but instead they had carefully separated criminals from victims. They had even provided medical aid to wounded slavers. It makes no sense, he continued. They had the power to simply destroy their enemies, but they chose the harder path of justice. Theta 9 looked confused. Doctor, isn't mercy considered a positive trait? Not in warfare, Dr. Voss replied. In warfare, mercy is a weakness that gets you killed. The Empire has survived for 5,000 years because we understand this. We show strength, we inspire fear, and we crush our enemies completely. Humans seem to have forgotten these basic lessons. But even as he said it, Dr. Voss wasn't sure he believed it anymore. The human approach shouldn't work, but somehow it did. In just a few months, they had accomplished what rebel groups had failed to do in centuries. They had made the Empire look weak and ineffective. His communication device chimed with an incoming message. It was from Admiral Zextara, requesting his presence at an emergency briefing. Dr. Voss gathered his reports and headed for the command center. The briefing room was filled with high-ranking Imperial officers, all looking tired and frustrated. Admiral Zextara stood at the front, gesturing toward a holographic star map. "Gentlemen," she began, "the situation in the Outer Rim has deteriorated significantly. In the past week alone, we've lost control of 7 mining colonies, 2 trading stations, and an entire planetary government." Governor Yexian, a fat reptilian creature with expensive robes, raised his hand. "Admiral, surely our forces can handle a few primitive rebels." "These aren't rebels, Governor," Admiral Zextara replied coldly. "These are human-led liberation movements, and they're not trying to conquer our territory. They're convincing our own citizens to leave." She touched a control on the table, and the star map changed to show population movements. Streams of red arrows indicated massive migrations away from Imperial space. "The humans aren't just freeing slaves," she continued. "They're offering sanctuary to any being that wants to escape Imperial rule. Entire populations are abandoning their worlds too. Join these so-called free colonies in human space." Dr. Voss studied the data with scientific interest. "How many beings have we lost so far?" "Over 2 million in the past month alone," Admiral Zextara replied. "And the rate is accelerating. The humans have established what they call freedom. Corridors, safe passage routes that allow beings to travel from Imperial space to their territories without interference." General Krovar, the Empire's chief military strategist, slammed his fist on the table. "This is unacceptable. We should crush these humans before they can spread their poison any further." "With what?" Admiral Zextara asked. "We can't even find their ships most of the time. When we do encounter them, they outmaneuver us effortlessly. And every time we try to use force, more worlds declare independence." Dr. Voss cleared his throat. "Admiral, if I may, I've been studying human psychology and biology. I believe I understand why our traditional tactics are failing." All eyes turned to him. Dr. Voss activated his datapad and projected his findings into the room. "Humans evolved on what they call a death world," he began. "Their planet was extremely hostile, with predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would have wiped out most species. To survive, they developed not just physical resilience, but psychological adaptations that make them fundamentally different from us." The display showed images of Earth's various dangers: massive storms, volcanic eruptions, deadly predators. They learned to work together not just with their own kind, but with other species on their world. They domesticated animals not through force, but through cooperation. This created a mental framework that sees diversity as strength rather than weakness. Governor Yexian scoffed. "Doctor, you're talking about primitive survival instincts. Surely civilized beings have moved beyond such things." "That's where you're wrong, Governor," Dr. Voss replied. "Humans never abandoned these instincts. They refined them. They turned survival into an art form. When they encounter injustice, their brains literally respond as if they were facing a predator threatening their pack. They can't ignore it any more than you could ignore a fire in your home." He brought up new data showing human brain scans during discussions of slavery and oppression. "Look at these neural patterns. When humans see suffering, their brains activate the same regions that control fight or flight responses. They're physically incapable of accepting injustice as normal." Admiral Zextara leaned forward. "Are you saying they can't be reasoned with?" "On the contrary," Dr. Voss replied, "they're extremely reasonable, but they operate from a completely different set of assumptions than we do. We see order and hierarchy as natural. They see freedom and equality as natural. We maintain control through fear. They inspire loyalty through hope. General Krovar stood up angrily. This is philosophical nonsense. They're just another species with advanced technology. We've conquered hundreds of worlds with advanced technology. Have we, General? Dr. Voss asked quietly. Or have we simply imposed our will through superior firepower? Because humans aren't trying to impose anything. They're offering choices. He changed the display to show intercepts of human communications with Imperial citizens. Listen to this, he said, playing an audio recording. A human voice spoke in clear, simple language. We're not here to conquer your world or force you to change. We're here to offer you an alternative. If you're happy with your current government, we respect that, but if you want something different, we can help you build it. The room fell silent. Dr. Voss could see the implications sinking in. They're not fighting a war, Admiral Zexthara said slowly. They're offering a better life. Exactly, Dr. Voss confirmed. And for beings who have spent their entire lives under Imperial rule, that offer is incredibly appealing. Especially when they see that humans are willing to fight and die to protect that freedom. Governor Yexion shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Surely most beings prefer security to freedom. Order to chaos. Do they? Dr. Voss asked. He brought up population statistics from worlds that had joined the Human Alliance. Look at these numbers. Crime rates down by 70%. Economic productivity up by 40%. Disease and malnutrition virtually eliminated. Scientific advancement accelerated by orders of magnitude. He paused to let that sink in. Humans don't just offer freedom, Governor. They offer prosperity. They've created societies where beings can pursue their own interests while contributing to the common good. It's not chaos, it's a different kind of order. General Krovar sat back down heavily. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't want to defeat us? They want to convert us. That's exactly the problem, Admiral Zexthara replied. We're not dealing with a military threat. We're dealing with an ideological one. And ideologies can't be conquered with ships and soldiers, Dr. Voss nodded. The humans have turned our own strength against us. Every time we use force to maintain order, we prove their point about the Empire being oppressive. Every time we ignore suffering, we drive more beings into their arms. The meeting continued for hours, but Dr. Voss could see that no one had any real solutions. How do you fight an enemy that makes you look like a villain simply by existing? How do you maintain an empire built on fear when someone offers an alternative built on hope? Later that evening, Dr. Voss returned to his laboratory. He stood once, again before the genetic data on his screens, but now he was seeing it differently. Humans weren't just another alien species. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, a people who had turned survival into service, strength into compassion, and victory into liberation. He thought about his own life under Imperial rule. 300 years of serving an empire that valued order above all else. He had studied hundreds of species, cataloged their weaknesses, helped develop weapons to use against them. He had never questioned whether it was right or wrong. It was simply the way things were, but humans questioned everything. They looked at the galaxy and asked not, how can we control this? But how can we make this better? Dr. Voss walked to his communication console and began composing a message. It was addressed to the Human Diplomatic Mission, specifically to Dr. Sarah Chun, their Chief Science Officer. He had been exchanging research data with her as part of the diplomatic process, and he had been impressed by her knowledge and integrity. Dr. Chun, he wrote, I've been studying your species for several weeks now, and I must admit that you have challenged many of my assumptions about life in the galaxy. I would like to request a private meeting to discuss some findings that I believe could be beneficial to both our peoples. He paused before sending the message. Once he pressed that button, he would be crossing a line. He would be reaching out to the enemy, seeking cooperation instead of conquest. But were they really the enemy? Or were they something else entirely? A glimpse of what the galaxy could become if beings chose hope over fear, Cooperation over domination? Dr. Voss pressed the send button and sat back in his chair. For the first time in his long life, he was excited about the future. The humans had shown him that there were other ways to live, other ways to organize society, other ways to relate to fellow beings. The Empire might see them as a threat, but Dr. Voss was beginning to see them as something far more dangerous and far more wonderful. They were hope itself, walking among the stars and daring to ask why things couldn't be better, and that question, once asked, could never be unasked. Emperor Corvinthal sat on his throne of polished black stone, staring at the reports spread across the golden table before him. For 5,000 years, his dynasty had ruled the galaxy with absolute power. No rebellion had ever lasted more than a few decades. No enemy had ever posed a real threat to Imperial supremacy. But now, for the first time in his long reign, the Emperor felt genuinely afraid. The reports painted a picture of systematic collapse. 17 star systems had declared independence in the past month. Trade routes were disrupted as entire populations abandoned their worlds. The Imperial military was stretched thin, chasing shadows and fighting an enemy they couldn't even find most of the time. "Bring me Admiral Zexthora," he commanded. His guards bowed and hurried away. The Emperor remained alone in his vast throne room, surrounded by statues of his ancestors. Each one had expanded the empire, conquered new worlds, enslaved new species. They had built a legacy of power that was supposed to last forever, but humans had changed everything in just a few months. Admiral Zexthara entered the throne room and knelt before the Emperor. Her forearms touched the floor in the traditional gesture of submission, but Corvinthal could see the tension in her posture. "Rise," he said. "Tell me honestly, Admiral. Can we defeat these humans?" Zexthara stood slowly. "Your Majesty, in conventional warfare, I believe we could overwhelm them through sheer numbers, but they refuse to fight conventional battles. They strike without warning, accomplish their objectives, and disappear before we can respond. Then we must force them to fight," the Emperor declared. "What would make them come out of hiding?" "I'm not sure they would take that bait, Your Majesty. Humans seem to value individual lives more than strategic advantage. They won't sacrifice innocent beings just to win a battle." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "You speak as if that's a strength, Admiral. In some ways, it is, Your Majesty. It makes them unpredictable. Our tactical computers can't model an enemy that prioritizes saving lives over achieving victory." Corvinthal stood and walked to the massive window that showed his capital city stretching to the horizon. Millions of beings lived and worked in the towering structures below, all serving the Empire. But lately he had noticed changes. The news broadcasts spoke of the human alliance. Workers whispered about freedom and choice. Even his own palace staff seemed distracted and restless. "Admiral, I want you to assemble our most powerful battle fleet. Take 500 ships and destroy the human home system. If they value individual lives so much, let's see how they react when their own people are threatened." Admiral Zexthara hesitated. "Your Majesty, our intelligence suggests that Earth is heavily defended, and attacking their civilian population might unite other species against us." "Other species are already uniting against us," the Emperor snapped. "Every day more worlds join this human alliance. Every day more beings abandon their loyalty to the Empire. This cancer must be cut out before it spreads further." "As you command, Your Majesty." Admiral Zexthara bowed again and left the throne room. The Emperor returned to his window, watching the city below. Soon, he thought, the humans would learn what happened to those who challenged Imperial authority. 3 days later, the largest battle fleet in Imperial history departed for human space. 500 warships, including the Empire's most advanced dreadnoughts and carriers. Admiral Zexthara commanded from the flagship Eternal Dominance, a massive vessel that could destroy entire planets, but as the fleet traveled through hyperspace, Zexthara couldn't shake her doubts. In all her years of service, she had never questioned the Emperor's commands. But this time felt different. The humans had never directly attacked Imperial worlds or citizens. They had only targeted criminals and freed slaves. Was that really worth starting a war of extermination? Her thoughts were interrupted by Lieutenant Vorn. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from human space. It's on all frequencies, broadcasting to our entire fleet. Show me. The main screen displayed Captain Elena Vasquez standing on the bridge of the Defiant. She looked calm and confident, not at all like someone whose people were about to be attacked by overwhelming force. Admiral Zextara, Elena said, we know about your fleet and its mission. We're sorry to see that the Empire has chosen this path, but we want you to know that we don't hold your soldiers responsible for following orders they don't understand. Zextara felt a chill run through her body. How could the humans know about their mission? Their fleet was still days away from human territory, Elena continued speaking. We also want you to know that we're not going to hide behind our defenses and let your people die in a pointless attack. Instead, we're coming to meet you. We think it's time you understood what you're really fighting. The transmission ended. Lieutenant Vorn looked confused. Admiral, how could they know our exact position and fleet composition? Before Zexthar could answer, the fleet's sensors began detecting contacts ahead. At first, just a few ships, then dozens, then hundreds. Human vessels were appearing throughout the star system, surrounding the Imperial fleet. This is impossible, whispered Commander Krath. Our scouts detected no human presence in this system. Admiral Zexthara studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The human ships were smaller than Imperial vessels, but there were so many of them, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in Imperial databases. Open a channel to the human fleet, she ordered. Captain Vasquez appeared on screen again. Admiral, we don't want to fight you, but we can't let you attack innocent civilians. We're offering you one chance to withdraw peacefully. Captain, Zexthara replied, you're outnumbered 5-1. Surrender now, and your people will be treated according to galactic law. Elena smiled sadly. Admiral, numbers don't mean much when you're fighting for the wrong reasons. Our people are fighting to protect their families and their freedom. Your people are fighting because they were ordered to? That makes all the difference. The human ships began moving into attack formation, but they didn't charge forward like typical warships. Instead, they flowed around the Imperial fleet like water, each ship seeming to know exactly where the others would be. All ships prepare for battle. Admiral Zexthara commanded, fire at will. The Imperial fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, nuclear missiles, enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. But the human ships moved like nothing Zexthara had ever seen. They twisted and spun through space, avoiding most of the Imperial fire while returning. Precise shots that disabled Imperial weapons and engines within minutes. It became clear that the battle was going very badly for the Empire. Imperial ships were being systematically disabled, their crews captured or evacuated. But the humans weren't trying to destroy the Imperial vessels. They were trying to save the crews while taking the ships out of action. Admiral, Lieutenant Vorn called out, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 of our ships. Their captains say the humans are offering medical aid and safe passage to any crew that stops fighting. Zexthara watched in disbelief as Imperial soldiers began abandoning their posts. Not out of cowardice, but because the humans were treating them with a kindness they had never experienced in Imperial service. The battle lasted only 4 hours. When it was over, 3/4 of the Imperial fleet had surrendered. The remaining ships were either disabled or in full retreat, and the humans had accomplished this while suffering minimal casualties themselves. Captain Vasquez appeared on screen one final time. Admiral Zexthara, we're sending medical teams to help with. You're wounded. We'll also provide transport for any of your people who want to return to Imperial space. Why? Zexthara asked. Why show mercy to an enemy that came to destroy you? Because you're not our enemy, Admiral. Your people doing what you think is right, just like we are. The difference is that we're fighting for something we believe in, while you're fighting for something you were told to believe in. Zaxthara looked around her bridge. Half her crew was wounded and her ship was dead in space. But the human medical teams that boarded were treating Imperial and human casualties with equal care. For the first time in her military career, Admiral Zaxthara began to question everything she had been taught about duty and loyalty. News of the defeat spread quickly throughout Imperial space. The response was not what Emperor Corvinthal had expected. Instead of rallying to the Empire's defense, more worlds declared independence. The humans had proven that the Empire could be defeated, and that knowledge spread like wildfire. But something else spread even faster, the recordings of the battle. The humans had broadcast everything, showing how they had treated Imperial prisoners with respect and dignity. They had shared medical supplies with wounded enemies. They had offered safe passage to anyone who wanted to go home. Dr. Kellner Voss watched the recordings from his laboratory, feeling a profound change in his understanding of the galaxy. He had spent his life serving an empire built on fear and domination. But here were beings who had achieved victory through compassion and hope. His communication device chimed with a message from Dr. Sarah Chun. Dr. Voss, we've reviewed your research proposals. We would be honored to have you join our scientific exchange program. Your knowledge could help us develop new medical treatments that would benefit all species. Dr. Voss stared at the message for a long time. It was an invitation to betray everything he had ever known, but it was also an invitation to be part of something better. He began typing his reply. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Imperial citizens were making choices they had never imagined possible. Some chose to stay loyal to the Empire, but millions chose freedom. The humans had not conquered anyone. They had simply shown that there were alternatives to Imperial rule. They had proven that different species could work together as equals. They had demonstrated that strength could be used to protect rather than dominate. Emperor Corvinthal sat alone in his throne room, surrounded by the statues of his ancestors. For 5,000 years, his family had ruled through fear. But fear only worked when people had no hope of anything better. The humans had brought hope to the galaxy. And hope, the Emperor was learning, was more powerful than any weapon his empire possessed. Outside his palace, he could hear the sounds of celebration. His own citizens were cheering the news of Imperial defeats. They were welcoming human ships that offered passage to free worlds. They were choosing liberty over security, hope over fear. The Empire was not being conquered. It was being abandoned. And there was nothing Corvinthal could do to stop it. For the first time in 5,000 years, the galaxy was choosing its own destiny. And that destiny did not include the Galactic Empire. 6 months after the Great Battle, Admiral Zaxthara stood on the observation deck of what used to be the Imperial capital. The massive city below looked different now. Where once there had been military parades and symbols of Imperial power, there were now medical stations, food distribution centers, and schools where beings from dozens of species learned together. The transformation had happened faster than anyone could have imagined. After the defeat of the Imperial fleet, the collapse had accelerated, not through violence or conquest, but through choice. World after world had simply decided they wanted something different. Zaxthara wore a simple blue uniform now, marking her as a coordinator in the Galactic Relief Organization. It was strange how quickly she had adapted to her new role. Instead of commanding warships, she now organized rescue missions for refugees fleeing the last holdout Imperial territories. Admiral, called Dr. Kellner Voss as he approached. He carried a datapad filled with medical reports. The latest statistics from the Outer Rim territories are remarkable. Disease rates have dropped by 80% since the transition began. Zaxthara nodded. The humans brought more than just freedom, didn't they? They brought knowledge, medicine, technology that actually helps people instead of controlling them. Dr. Voss had been one of the first high-ranking Imperial officials to join the transition government. His scientific expertise had proven invaluable in understanding the various species' needs and helping them adjust to their new circumstances. Have you seen the education reports? he asked, activating his datapad. Children who were trained only for Imperial service are now learning art, music, science, philosophy, things that were considered dangerous under the old system. They walked together toward the central plaza, where a crowd had gathered. Captain Elena Vasquez was giving one of her regular addresses to the people. She had become something of a symbol of the new era, though she insisted she was just one voice among many. "My friends," Elena was saying to the diverse crowd of beings, 6 months ago, many of you asked me what humans wanted from the galaxy. Today, I think you can see the answer. We didn't want to rule you or control you. We wanted you to have the same chance we had, the chance to choose your own destiny." A young Zilani in the crowd raised her hand. "Captain Vasquez, what happens? If some beings want to return to the old Imperial system? What if they don't want freedom?" Elena smiled. "Then that's their choice to make. Freedom means the right to choose, even if we don't agree with the choice. We've established several protected territories where beings can live under traditional Imperial law if that's what makes them happy," an elderly Kregan warrior stepped forward. "But how do we prevent another empire from rising? How do we keep this freedom?" "By remaining vigilant," Elena replied. "By teaching our children that freedom requires responsibility. By helping each other and remembering that we're all stronger when we work together." Admiral Zextara listened to the exchange with fascination. Under Imperial rule, such questions would have been considered treasonous. Now they were encouraged. The humans had created something unprecedented, a galactic community, based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. After the crowd dispersed, Elena approached Zextara and Dr. Voss. "Admiral, I have news from the Outer Rim. The last Imperial stronghold on Vega 7 has agreed to negotiations." "Emperor Corvinthal?" Zextara asked. "He's requested a personal meeting with human leadership. He says he wants to discuss terms." "For a peaceful transition," Dr. Voss looked surprised. "The Emperor himself? I never thought he would surrender." "He's not surrendering," Elena corrected. "He's choosing. There's a difference." 2 days later, they gathered in what had once been the Imperial throne room. The golden decorations and intimidating statues had been removed, replaced with simple chairs arranged in a circle. It was symbolic of how everything had changed, from hierarchy to equality, from domination to cooperation. Emperor Corvinthal entered the room without ceremony. He was smaller than Zextara remembered, and he looked tired. The weight of losing an empire had clearly taken its toll on him. Elena stood and offered him a seat. "Your Imperial Majesty, thank you for coming." "Please," Corvinthal said quietly, "just call me Corven. I am no longer an emperor of anything." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Corven spoke again. "Captain Vasquez, I must ask you something. That has been troubling me. You could have destroyed my empire through force. You had the power to simply take everything we had built. Why didn't you?" Elena leaned forward. "Because destroying something doesn't create anything better. We learned long ago that lasting change comes from within, not from external force. We could have conquered you, but then we would have just become the new oppressors." "But how can you be sure this new system will work? How do you maintain order without authority?" Dr. Voss answered. "Corvin, I've been studying the human approach for months now. They don't maintain order through fear. They maintain it through shared purpose. When beings work toward common goals they believe in, they police themselves." Admiral Zextara nodded. "I've seen it myself. The refugee camps run more smoothly than Imperial military bases ever did. People help each other because they want to, not because they're forced to." Elena pulled out a small device and projected a holographic display. It showed statistics from across the former Imperial territories. "Look at these numbers," she said. "Crime rates down 90%. Economic productivity up 60%. Scientific advancement accelerated beyond anything we've seen before. When beings are free to pursue their interests and talents, everyone benefits." Corvin studied the data with the eye of someone who had spent millennia managing an empire. "These numbers are impressive, but what about defense? How do you protect?" All this prosperity from those who would take it by force. The same way we protected it from you, Elena replied, by making sure that anyone who threatens innocent life faces the combined response of the entire galactic community. And by showing potential aggressors that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. She changed the display to show the current political map of the galaxy. Instead of the rigid imperial boundaries, there were now hundreds of small, self-governing territories connected by trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. No single government controls more than a few systems, Elena explained. But they're all connected through voluntary associations based on shared values. If one community is threatened, dozens of others will come to their aid. Kovan was quiet for a long time, studying the map. Finally he spoke. What do you want from me, Captain? Why arrange this meeting? We want your help, Elena said simply. You understand Imperial systems and psychology better than anyone. There are still millions of beings who are struggling with the transition. They need leaders who can help them understand that change doesn't have to be terrifying. You want me to convince my former subjects to abandon everything I taught them? No, Elena replied. We want you to help them understand that they can keep what was good about Imperial society while letting go of what was harmful. Order, discipline, cooperation. These are valuable things. The problem was when they were imposed by force rather than chosen freely. Dr. Voss leaned forward. Kovan, I've been working with refugees from Imperial territories. Many of them are lost and confused. They spent their entire lives being told what to do. Now they have to make their own choices and they don't know how. What exactly are you proposing? Kovan asked. Elena activated another display, showing plans for what they called transition centers. These were facilities where former Imperial citizens could learn new skills, explore different ways of living, and gradually adjust to freedom at their own pace. We want you to help design and run these centers, Elena said. You understand how Imperial minds work. You know what they need to hear to feel safe during this change? Admiral Zexthara was surprised by the proposal. Captain, are you sure about this? Many beings still see Korvan as a symbol of oppression, which is exactly why his participation would be so powerful, Elena replied. If the former emperor himself can embrace change and growth, it sends a message that anyone can. Korvan stood and walked to the window that looked out over the transformed city. Below, he could see beings from dozens of species working together, children playing in integrated schools, merchants from different worlds trading freely. For 5,000 years, he said slowly, my family maintained power by convincing people that they needed us to protect them from chaos. We made them believe that freedom was dangerous, that choice was overwhelming, that they were better off being told what to do. He turned back to face them. But looking at this city now, I see more order than ever existed under Imperial rule. Not the order of fear, but the order of purpose. People working together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. Elena nodded. That's the difference between control and leadership. Control uses fear to make people obey. Leadership uses hope to inspire people to act. Korvan sat back down. If I agree to this, what guarantee do I have that I won't simply be executed when I'm no longer useful? Dr. Voss spoke up. Korvan, I was one of your scientists for 300 years. I helped develop weapons to use against rebels and slaves. By Imperial standards, I'm a war criminal. But the humans didn't punish me. They asked me to use my knowledge to help heal the damage I had helped create. The past is the past, Elena added. We're interested in what you choose to do with your future. Will you help us build something better, or will you cling to something that's already gone? Kovarvan was quiet for several minutes. Then he looked up at Elena with an expression of resignation mixed with hope. Captain Vasquez, for my entire life, I believed that beings needed strong rulers to keep them in line. I thought that without the Empire, the galaxy would descend into chaos and war. But you've proven me wrong. You've shown that beings are capable of governing themselves, of working together, of choosing cooperation over conflict. He paused, then continued. I don't know if I can ever fully understand your way of thinking, but I'm willing to learn. If you truly believe I can help people during this transition, then I will try. Elena smiled and extended her hand. Welcome to the team, Corvan. As they shook hands, Admiral Zexthara felt a profound sense of closure. The empire that had defined her entire life was truly over. But something better had taken its place, a galaxy where beings were free to choose their own destinies. 3 months later, Corvan stood in front of a group of former Imperial citizens in one of the new transition centers. They looked at him with a mixture of confusion, anger, and hope. "My friends," he began, "for 5,000 years, my family told you that you needed us to survive. We convinced you that freedom was chaos, that choice was dangerous, that order could only come from above. I am here today to tell you that we were wrong." A woman in the crowd called out, "But Emperor, without the Empire, how do we know what to do?" Corvan smiled sadly. "You don't need me to tell you what to do. You never did. You have minds of your own, hearts of your own, dreams of your own. The Empire didn't create order. You did, through your work, your families, your communities. We just took credit for it." He gestured toward the window, where they could see humans and former Imperial citizens working together on a construction project. "Look at them," he said. "No one is commanding them. No one is threatening them. They're working together because they share a common goal. That's real order. That's real strength." An elderly man raised his hand. "What if we make the wrong choices? Then you'll learn from your mistakes and make better choices next time," Corvan replied. "That's what growth is. That's what freedom means, the right to fail, to learn, to try again." As the meeting continued, Corvan felt something he had never experienced in 5,000 years of absolute power. He felt useful. Not because people feared him or obeyed him, but because he was helping them discover their own strength. The Empire was gone, but the galaxy was more alive than it had ever been. And for the first time in his long life, Corvan was proud of his part in it. Outside, the stars shone down on a galaxy that had learned the most dangerous lesson of all, that beings were capable of governing themselves with wisdom, compassion, and hope. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy, they had liberated it. And that liberation was just the beginning.